Mr. Miyagiing it. We're live! 7:37. And me all sporting wrong cam attire. Today, I actually have questions for you. I don't have answers. I think Bruno does. That actually was Brady. I have questions. So hopefully somebody else has an answer. My question is this. You can see from the thumbnail, I have a 4-hole throttle body that we ran. I did a bunch of testing on a single plane intake manifold on a 6-liter LS. And we've done this many times. We've done it as blow-throughs and just as carbureted stuff and measured the charge temperature and stuff. But on the 6-liter, what I did was run a single plane intake. We ran a carburetor on it and then tuned the carburetor to get it to be, as good as the carburetor could be in terms of airfield distribution and stuff. And then we ran it with, because that manifold was set up to accept port injectors, we ran port EFI, where it's injecting down basically at the base of the manifold, the intersection between the manifold and the cylinder head. We ran it that way. And then we did batch fire, then we did sequential, then we did sequential with individual cylinder tuning to see which one of those makes the most power. And as it turned out, the carburetor tended to make the most power, although being able to tune each cylinder individually ultimately did fairly well too. But it just didn't have charge cooling associated with like cooling the air in the manifold, and it had better distribution because we could tune it and make the fuel go where we wanted it to go in the amounts that we wanted it to go in. But that seemed to be less important than introducing the fuel down at or at the top of the carb flange and the associated cooling with that. We know, and we've talked about this many times, that it does add power. That's why when guys say, oh, carburetors make more power than fuel injection, if you test them on the same manifold, that can be true. You obviously could, because they have fuel injection that injects fuel like a carburetor at the top of a single plane kind of manifold. You can also do that. You just can't do individual cylinder tuning with that. You can just tune globally unless you had a bunch of injectors on one side and a bunch of on the other, but they're not normally like that. They're usually paired. Sometimes there's 8 of them, depending on if there's a lot of them. But the question really isn't that. The question isn't really the difference between the carburetor and port injection. We know that the carburetor can make more power that way because we assume that it's because of charge cooling. But I'm now wondering if there's not also something else. Because here's why. If it's just charge cooling, if we're making the charge air colder and we're gaining power from density, why then do I not see power gains from water injection or water methanol injection? Even just water injection should do it. Because if we can lower the charge temperature, then we should be able to, we should have that cooling, right? That's freaking out the meter there. We should be able to cool the charge air at least equal to what it does with a carburetor with water methanol. Somebody asked this question. It got me thinking that why wouldn't that work? Now, their question was, why can't we make the fuel injection make as much as a carburetor if we did water methanol injection? I'm like, well, but water methanol injection can be used for both of those. It's less necessary with a carburetor, I would argue, because it already has charge cooling. If that's what we're looking at, if you're looking at suppressing detonation, then that's another thing. But my question is this, and the question is to the other guys out there, is that if we are lowering the charge temperature, which we are, using fuel, and that's why the carburetor makes more power than port fuel injection, why do we not gain power with water meth injection when we're lowering the charge air also? Why do we not get gains, even on a like an NA combination? Let's see if we can get this to be a little bit better. Yeah, a little bit. Why do we not get power gains like that? I don't even see power gains normally, even when we run them on boosted applications, other than having the ability, if we separate the ability to run more timing and run more boost, if we're doing that, because of the detonation suppression and the charge cooling. But why isn't the charge cooling all by itself adding power the way that it does in a carburetor? So that's my question. That's actually my question for you guys. So this we'll put this in a form of a poll. Water meth injection should add power. Okay, water meth injection should add power through charge cooling, the same as a carburetor. So we'll see what you guys think. We'll see what you think. And remember, this is irrespective of cylinder distributions and all those things that we're talking about. We're not talking about that. We're only because a carburetor doesn't do that. A carburetor doesn't differentiate cylinders. The cylinder distribution really is a function of the intake manifold more than the carburetors. The port injection obviously helps overcome that because then we can tune each one to whatever we're doing. But if we look at this intake manifold, it was kind of doomed to begin with because it's a single plane intake manifold. So it has different runner lengths. And even if it didn't have different runner lengths, it has different amounts of filling the way that they're angled. It's just the runners are going to be doing different things. And so those associated cylinders are going to be doing different things, meaning making different power in different RPM and requiring different amounts of fuel. The question is, does just the draw or lack of it created by the downward moving piston and the valve event, does that allow the carburetor to change its fuel metering in relation to those needs? Ideally, we know that that's not the case because having run 802s on single plane intake manifolds, carbureted or otherwise, I can tell you that it's not ideal. So we know that that's not happening. We know that it's not self-sufficient. We even know that fuel injection is not self-sufficient. We have to do some considerable tuning on that style intake manifold with port injection before we get, and it's not just getting the air fuel right in each cylinder, it's getting the air fuel right in each cylinder at every RPM. And we were only talking about wide open throttle. We weren't even talking about like cruise and stuff. That would be another interesting test if we could run that, out on the road and data log it and find out what happens when we're actually driving it around. We're going to see different. My light's freaking out. I think we're going to see different cylinder distribution even yet under part throttle. So it just would be an interesting test. But we're not really talking about that. We're just talking about the power gain from charge cooling and why don't we see that with water meth injection? And I've tested, I want it to work, and I've tried it many, many times, and it definitely is beneficial if you can add that, lower the charge temperature, lower the detonation threshold, even better, and then turn the timing up and turn the boost up. That's all good stuff. But why isn't it doing something all by itself? That's really my question. Let's see what you guys got going on. Australia, what's going on? And nobody recognizes my my quote, my movie quote. Almost done with my frosty cold beverage. Water meth does add power if you tune for it. The water meth doesn't add power. The tune does. The more timing does, or the more boost does. But the water meth doesn't add power. Frosty cold beverage. Got my camshaft, Jordan. I've got a bunch more going out. As a fact, when everything goes out tomorrow, that should be all of the cams that are ordered. Congratulations on your new pickup, Jordan. You can only do so much. Timing, though. Good evening. True, but I should have clarified. I'm speaking from a boosted approach. Howdy from Texas. That's appropriate. I like that. It's because the water displaces the air so much that oxygen it can't burn. That's an interesting point, Justin. That's a pretty good observation. That maybe we are getting some of the power. I'm waiting for that to explode violently. My light bulb, and maybe that's part of it. We see that, but the thing is, if we're injecting the fuel at the port versus injecting fuel at the carburetor, aren't we displacing some of the air by doing that? And we would definitely be displacing some of the air by injecting water methanol into the situation. But is a perfectly balanced trade-off between, hey, we cooled this and we got extra power, but oh yeah, we got less airflow because we're introducing water and displacing some of that airflow. Is it like a perfect balance? I would think that that's probably not the case, but I don't know. Let's see. Yeah, let's just smack it with something. It's not being atomized as well. That's what I'm wondering. That's what I'm wondering about the carburation thing. I'm wondering if we're seeing a more than just a change in charge temperature, but maybe there's atomization going on. Maybe there's droplet size. Maybe there's something else that's helping the additional power. Added timing and no increase. No, if you add timing, you can make more power if you're adding timing that the motor wants. So if you're limited by timing because of detonation, the motor really wants another 4 degrees, but you can't give it 4 degrees because it'll get into detonation. But if you could, the chamber design wants that additional timing and it will make more power. Because it doesn't always want more timing. Sometimes you already have enough. Sometimes we get to a point where we just add another degree and it goes, yeah, well, I'm not doing anything else. So sometimes that happens, but I'm not talking about adding timing. I'm not talking about adding boost. I'm just talking about just the introduction of the one change, the one variable. That's what I'm talking about. Let's see, and we're gone again. The added charge, the added water in the charge, high humidity hurts power. Added timing, especially boosts, usually more than offsets this. Maybe the distribution cylinder, 1 or 2 cylinders get more of the added mixture, get more of the added water methanol injection. I'm certain that happens particularly on given types of intake manifolds. We know that on the LS testing, on the long runner factory manifolds, it's not evenly distributed. So maybe it's hurting cylinders as much as it's helping others. I don't know. Tim headed to Tahoe tonight, with then Vegas on Monday for LS Fest next weekend. The added humidity. The fuel mix better when introduced under a higher vacuum with the boosters. I saw a test one time with timing and throttle body injection versus carburation. Carb needed less timing on a lazy combustion chamber. There's a whole science behind boosters. I agree. Atomizing the fuel is very important, but you'd think that a high pressure injector would atomize the fuel. And we need to differentiate this a little bit. Like if we have a carbureted single plane kind of manifold and we're getting good, probably not distribution with that manifold, but let's say that we're getting good atomization from the fuel, and then we introduce water into it, it's possible, I guess, that could make it worse. Better fuel vaporization affecting the burn with cooling. Remember the latent heat of vaporization, what changes the temperature. But we should be able to get that with water methanol injection. That's my whole point. I've been thinking about using a Prius AC compressor to act as a freon cooler under a supercharger. Okay. Yeah, that's people have circulated that for intercoolers. In fact, Dodge did that on their factory stuff. Is there extra oxygen from the water? I don't think that you're liberating the oxygen molecule in water to get extra power like you do with nitrous. I don't think that it breaks down. The first turbo Oldsmobile had a water bottle. Yeah, because they didn't have an intercooler, and that's better than not having an intercooler, and then just not as good as having an intercooler. I think it's basically the carb is just doing all the cooling that the METH would do, if not more. One or the other is fine, but both don't add together to further increase air density. But that's my point. If you have a carburetor, let's say we have a carburetor on a single plane manifold and we run it, and then we have a 4-hole throttle body with port injection and water METH injection going into the 4-hole throttle body. Shouldn't we be able to make as much power as the carburetor does? And it doesn't do that. The water METH doesn't add the power. Do you remember the 5-stroke engine? Mechanics Illustrated did an article on years ago. I don't. The 5th stroke was just water injected into the hot chamber. So they're using it, using another stroke as a steam engine, basically. I don't feel like the methanol humidity is causing an issue. Otherwise, you'd see power. And you'd think, if anything, with methanol, it should add power, because we see a change in power when we add E85 to some stuff. World War II German ME-109s increased horsepower from 1,700 to 2,200 using methanol injection. Yeah, but they didn't do it with the methanol injection. They did it with a change on pressure and timing, though. Cooling is about charge density. Basically, think hot fuel but cold air. So how are you getting those? I'm looking for a local tuner to reprogram my PCM for the 5.7 with a Trek Norris. Keep torque management until I know how it runs. I do know the gasoline vaporizes pretty quickly with heat. Ethanol injection, the alcohol has an oxygen available for combustion. Yeah, I think his comment was the one I was responding to was just about water. It doesn't liberate an oxygen molecule from the water. Water injection, expansion of water should see more torque easily to add. It's easy to add too much water. I don't know why the expansion of water. Are you talking about that 5th cycle thing, or are you talking about just water injection itself? The air is cooled as much as possible by the carb. The METH couldn't be able to cool it down more if the fuel and METH is the same temperature. Yeah, but I don't know that, technically speaking, I don't know that the methanol and the fuel would be the same temperature. I think we get more cooling from E85 and even more cooling from methanol injection. But my thing is the comparison between the gas from the carburetor and the water METH injection, or just methanol injection, or just water injection. I'm just talking about why is charge cooling from the carburetor successful and charge cooling from other methods is not successful in gaining power. Methanol is compressible. The fuel has time to absorb energy from the air, changing the feel a bit without costing O2 from the hot air. Where's the hot air coming from? Are you talking about just the temperature differential between the two, when one's hotter and one's colder? No, water doesn't burn. When you use methanol, don't use much more fuel. Yeah, and same thing with the 85. The 85 is 25 to 30%. The methanol is even more than that. And then nitromethane is all of it, 8 times as much. Do I already know? I don't know the answer to this. That's why I'm asking. I don't really understand why and I've tested it many, many times. I don't understand why the water methanol itself, if we cool the air, which we are doing, we know that because we see that. Why aren't we getting a commensurate change in power? Yeah, I just don't. I'd like to see somebody that knows, and that could be almost anybody that knows way more about this than I do. That I'd like to see them answer the data, or maybe elaborate. Or remember, top fuel lines were 5-inch tubing. That's Anthony, are you quoting Sergeant Schultz? And still nobody saw my. Disappointed. It fills up the port. Yeah. Well, no, that I think his comment was about direct injection versus port injection. Direct injection directs it directly into the cylinder, and so you have more airflow. But that's not what we're talking about here, because we're talking about displacing the airflow in both of these situations. One of them with fuel from the carburetor, and the other one with water methanol. And so they're both doing that. And we could assume in our theoretical adventure that we had the right amount of both of those happening, so that you just have enough water meth injection to where it would offer charge cooling, but not enough to where you would, hinder flame propagation, or, where you would only get charge cooling, basically. How big of a change do you get from fuel injection to a carburetor? Yeah, it would depend on. I mean, it's significant enough that if you look at NASCAR when they switched over, and look at Pro Stock when they switched over, it took a long time for them to, relatively speaking, it took a fair bit of time before they were able to get the fuel injection to make the power that the carburetor did. That's a great question. I would imagine gasoline is hot, as in it evaporates faster than the evaporation makes it cooler, because it evaporates faster than methanol. So do you think that we need the much higher charge temperatures for the methanol to be effective? That's why we come to you, Richie. You're a data guy. You crunch numbers, read the dyno. That's all that matters. It is all that matters. I like the data part of it very much, but there's a lot of really sharp guys out there, and I'd like them to. I saw the Sex Pistols line. Yeah, it's from. It's actually from the movie The School of Rock. Boosters can add mile per gallon or power boosters for different usages, not just fuel richness. The velocity across the booster matters. Yeah, that's the booster design. It's designed to atomize it at given flow rates and speeds. Injection at the valve versus injection at the runner away from the valve versus injection at both places at wide open throttle. I don't know what you mean by at the runner away from the valve, like at the entry to the runner. That's a good spot for injection. That definitely makes power. So I prefer to build something that runs on 87 and naturally aspirated. Cheap to drive, usually more reliable. Honestly, I think you're expecting too much change. I'm not expecting too much change. Whatever the change is when we have the difference between a carburetor and port injection, whatever that is, if it's 5 horsepower or 10 horsepower, whatever it is, I just want there to be some change with the water methanol injection. Read Supercharger by Elred Norman. I haven't heard of that. Are you adding more ignition timing with meth injection? No, this isn't about adding more timing or adding more boost. This is just about the charge cooling. If you carbs work because gas is obviously flammable and water injection isn't. Water itself is not, but the methanol part of it is. If you don't tune for it, the water injection hurts power from the higher humidity more than the charge cooling helps it. So that's what you think, Aaron? V8 each cylinder with its own timing, own airflow, own valve. I use NASCAR motors from 10 years ago as an example. They're doing individual cylinder timing. Water in the air reduces density. Add an injector that fogs fuel. Why is the water sprayed with methanol? Water meth is the normal thing that people use so that you're not just having a fuel tank, an extra fuel tank under the hood. Usually, I think that they're doing that for flammability maybe and for safety. But water is a good anti-detonant. It works fairly well. Mercedes from the 70s used low pressure AC return line to cool the fuel. Did they do that for their carbureted stuff or for their fuel injection? Obviously, with higher pressures on the fuel, you'd have more of an issue with temperature. Win $1 million a week for the rest of your life. I don't think that that's probably a real thing. Dang, too much to drink, I think. Safer than lead. How effective is plumbing your windshield fluid into your intake? That's fairly common back in the day when they used to use the windshield washer reservoirs and fluid to as a makeshift water methanol injection. Water grains is a huge power changer. NHRA Top Fuel talk about it all the time, and the methanol won't compensate for the loss of these grains. Are you talking about the droplet size of the waters? With pump fuel, I use it as a safety factor. Iron heads 15 psi. Those grains are also displacing O2 as well. I can stop ignition knock. Yep. Smoky Unic hot vapor engine. Somebody was supposed to have one of those and be getting it running. Water to seam or cylinder pressure. I would kind of like to see that. Three things change: air density, altitude, temperature, and humidity. That's how they measure the water content in the fuel. Yeah, I know that the racers talk about humidity a lot. Like I said, I want it to, I want the charge going to work. The water fuel has many things happening all at once. It probably is not something simple. That would be too convenient and easy. Water's added for shipping. They would need a license to ship 51% methanol. Oh, so is it a fuel or a alcohol kind of tax thing? I've always tried from the snow stuff. I've always tried their boost juice stuff, and that's always worked fairly well for lowering charge temperatures and stuff. But I just don't know about. I don't know about distribution is one of the things, but then I also don't know about the power gains. Carbs reducing temperature and creating a denser charge through a JT effect is different than injecting and displacing air with a chemical cooler. But isn't the result the same? Isn't the temperature change the same? Garlic would know about humidity because he's a swamp rat. Yep. How's our poll doing? Water method injection should add power through charge cooling the same as a carburetor. 62% saying yes. That was Garlitz's home track was Bradenton. Water meth was used in Buick Olds. Yep. Google search water grains for a better explanation. So, but what if we didn't use water, even when we just used methanol injection? Bob, you got your cooler intercooler going? Use methanol for the tests. Well, then that would just make me want to run the whole motor on methanol. Why don't I just do that? Yeah, Ronald, I'm familiar with the Oldsmobile. What about using RC car nitro methanol blend? Yeah, it's expensive, but you could do that. I started to add small EFI injectors in the port, but the complexity just wasn't worth the work. Washer pump injection cost me an engine when it siphoned while parked and broke a rod. Yeah, it doesn't it doesn't like to compress very well, does it? Building internal header and piping now. I think I'll be able to pull 4 1.5-inch loops. Cool. I'm currently working on a 4.5 liter or a 4.5 Power Stroke, same as a 6 liter, but a V6. So it's part of a Power Stroke. High pressure tries to force the air to take fuel boosters. Booster coaxes fuel into the airstream. I don't know if methanol is cheaper than gas. E85 certainly is. At least it is per gallon. But I don't know if I've ever taken a look at the cost of methanol versus gasoline. In Brazil, they run cars on methanol, energy neutral country now. People spend thousands for AC style inner chillers. Has anybody ever run one of those? Anybody here? I never have. Full methanol injection won't provide enough offset of cooling gain to offset the loss of power due to poor BTU output per pound of fuel. Yeah, and I don't think that I think that the amount that we're talking about injecting is not we're not using the methanol as fueling as much as we're using it for charge cooling. The fueling is going to come from the primary injectors and whatever the primary fuel that you're using is. I've been asking you to run a test from E85 to methanol where there's a timing limit over 1,000 horsepower. So you want to take 1,000 horsepower motor and run it up to some detonation limit and then change from E85 to methanol? Where is the injection taking place? If it's at the port? Yeah, nobody that I know injects water methanol at the port. It's always injected in the, somewhere usually in the intake tube in front of the throttle body. Isn't E85 cheaper than premium? E85 is cheaper than regular gas where we are. It's much cheaper than gasoline is. But you just need a lot more of it. Methanol injection will cause the engine to run much richer, again, hurting power. Well, actually, running methanol with or small amounts of methanol with a water methanol injection would make it run less rich than if you had the same amount of fuel in it. If you were injecting gasoline, because it takes so much more methanol to make it rich. So of the three, methanol would be the best choice for that. It would change the air fuel the least, right? Well, look at you. Well, come here and say hi. Come here. Get up here. Come on. Get up here. Come on. What? You're gonna disrespect me? You better get up here. Hello. What are you doing? Come on. Well, you gotta say hi. That's it. You had enough. Here comes your brother. He's gonna jump up. He's gonna come up and see me. See? Come on. Well, come up now. Come on, Brady. Hello. I know. You guys are good doggies, huh? Good doggies. Okay. No, you can't have my bottle. I know that's what you're looking at. But Dad, you have a plastic bottle right there, and we like those. Those are like our favorite things. Methanol is less BTU per unit of fuel, but when you're using it as a primary fuel, you spray more. Yep. Just like E85. 360 for regular in Tampa yesterday. Don't Indy 500 cars run on methanol? I don't know what their fuel is now. I wonder if an emulsion of fuel and water would be different. Never tried, but I have thought of using gas fuel pump and using E85 injection. Let's see. I believe Formula One at one time used injectors at the valve and at the intake end of the runner. They did. They used to run dual injectors. The ones at the port were basically for drivability, and the other ones were for power. I thought that methanol was used to help the water evaporate, and the water was for its ability to pull heat out. You're displacing a volume of air and fuel by doing so with methanol and water. Yep, I agree. And you're doing that by introducing gasoline in there too with a carburetor. E85 costs more than methanol. Oh, the dogs are awesome. Thank you. Makes me wonder if heating up the fuel on fuel injection would gain power. I know they've done something on that. Direct injection, not sure about regular injection. I tried cooling the EFI fuel. I know that fuel cooling is a good idea for these like drag and drive guys because they get really hot. The fuel in the tanks get really hot. And then they can run into problems. But I don't know, Scott. It would be interesting to see if you could actually, do a structured test where you knew the temperature of the fuel as it's being introduced. And you're slowing the burn rate both with the water and the methanol and not adding time either to compensate for this, as if you should run full methanol combo. Even for injection, I think the reason was for vapor lock, even with CIS continuous injection. T, thank you very much. Yeah, that's Brady and Bruno. They're good when they're not causing trouble. The vapor pressure of gas is 10 times that of water, so you can get much more cooling. If you put a thermocouple in the port and match the temperature by chilling water with ice, you should get close to matching power. So you're saying that we're not getting nearly the same charge temperature in the port with water methanol as we are with gas. I thought port injection was so the valves didn't carbon up on the backside. Well, compared to direct injection, it is. Which will produce more power, methanol or E85? Normally, methanol does. Maybe the air reaches the ambient air temperature on both water meth carburetors and port injection. The air temperature in the intake manifold is way below ambient temperature. After going through the carburetor, you'll see condensation on the carburetor. It's way below ambient air temperature. I think when we were measuring it, it was in the high 30s or low 40s. Direct injection now has fuel squirters in the ports again. Yeah, because they don't want to. They don't want to have the warranty claims of all the buildup on the valves. Regular fuel is $3.49. Heating the fuel reminds me of Smokey attempting an adiabatic engine. I didn't talk to Calvin today. I was trying to get a bunch of stuff shipped. What I did was I took a cam box basically, and I went to the post office. So I went yesterday to the post office and got an estimate on shipping it. And then came back today and got an estimate, and the estimate was completely different. And I'm like, how is this different? And so I went to another post office, and it turned out that higher number was the correct number. I also went to UPS and I also went to Federal Express to get pricing, shipping pricing, on the same thing. So it was interesting. Try this, spray water methanol on a previously tuned engine and watch what the air fuel does. I've done that a lot. I know what it does. I know how it changes the air fuel. You can look at, I talk about it in the video that I put up. Ever use your dog's hearing as a diagnostic tool? What would I be listening to that would be ultrasonic? How close are TBI temps compared to carbs? I don't know. I don't have exact temperature data. I don't know how the fuel distribution is on throttle body injection. I know that when GM did their stuff, their factory TBI stuff, that they put swirl vanes underneath it to, I think, to shear the fuel more. Because I think it, even with throttle body injection, which was fairly low, was somewhere between like 9 and 15 psi, I think, that they don't get the atomization that a carburetor does. I have a few 50-watt Peltier coolers that I will be using around my car to cool down parts. Airplane has a carb heat lever to keep carb entry from icing up. Yeah. 93 octanes, almost $4. Hopefully my car never runs at 10,000 feet. Yeah. Although we've driven that high. I'm probably not 10,000 feet, but I'm trying to think of what the highest spot on the Sierras that we've driven at. I know that we've skied at 10,000 feet. What are some good tips when getting a car dynoed if you've never got work done before by a certain individual? Make sure that everything's ready. One of the problems they have that I've seen at lots of different tuning places is that guys will come in and go, yeah, I want my car tuned, except the car doesn't even run. That's not a tune. That's a fix. That's a different thing. They'll come in with the fuel pump's not working and all kinds of things. And then a lot of times the fuel pump's clogged, the filters are clogged, all kinds of stuff. And that's not a tune. A tune is bringing the car in, it's running, and you want to make it better. That's a tune. The other stuff is other stuff. And I can see why guys that have shops are like, look, I can't do this. I can't come in and you push your car off a trailer and say, yeah, I want to get it tuned when it doesn't even work. That's a different thing. That's working on the engine and getting everything working. And then the tuning part of it is with the guy, sitting behind his laptop making magic stuff happen. They offer company rates through all major shippers at way better prices. I don't know what I have to scroll back here. Yeah, I went on to the recommendation of the guys at Brian Julie Racing. What is it? ShipStation, I think, and it's way less. I believe most general aviation planes have moved over to fuel injection to eliminate vapor lock. No carb to ice up, but maybe the throttle body does ice, so maybe they use a bleed air for that. It's got to be cold up there, right? Richard, is a 4500 AccuFab throttle body too much for a 6-liter stage 4 LS3 cam 243? Yes. It's not too much. It's way more than you need. The thing that I do like about that combination is that if you have a 4500 single plane intake manifold, that's going to be better than a 4150. I live above 7,000 feet and I've driven my Chevelle up to 10,000 feet. Are you like by Pikes Peak or somewhere? Where are you at? San Diego, California, 91 octane, 529 a gallon. Oh, for bearings that are going bad and brakes that are going bad, if you tap your brakes and her ears perk up, something's wrong. I can hear my brakes, so that they're bad enough to where it's not ultrasonic. Have to weld the bung in the exhaust for temp gauge for the dyno. Yeah, if that's dyno prep, then your exhaust should have something to run an O2 sensor, ideally. A lot of them have sniffers in the back, and that works fine. That's why I drain the fuel in my truck after the 4.8Cs. You got to get every last drop out of it. I hated when I had the Silver Bullet, when I had the little Honda that I traded for the intercooler. I actually traded originally for tacos, but that's why I didn't ever want to leave that much fuel in it. And that's back when fuel was cheap. Richard, if you know it goes rich without tuning it, then why you're asking why doesn't it add power? So earlier when I said if we imagine that we have an optimized air fuel with a carburetor and we have an optimized amount of charge cooling offered by the water methanol injection, that just completely went by everybody. I'm asking about the charge cooling. I'm not asking about a change in air fuel. Don't think water meth injection as charge cooling. Think of water meth as detonation inhibitor. If I remember information from American fighter planes, you inject water meth for too long, you stalled the engine. I stripped one of my aluminum 5.3 head bolts this evening. That's not good. It was in relation to the fuel pump not working. Yep. Civic, or actually, I don't think it was a Civic. I think it was an Accord. Tacos, handshake, and then an intercooler, which is a sweet deal, I think, for me. I run water meth in my setup instead of an intercooler. We made 512 wheel horsepower before he popped it. Again, with the water methanol injection, I worry about distribution in those things, especially with weird intake manifolds that are supposed to flow only air. It's hard to get that thing to work right. It's a chemistry thing, the properties of water meth in a vacuum versus its properties under pressure and boost. I don't know. I'm not smart enough to know that. I don't know if we need more temperature to realize the gains from the water meth combination. And I don't remember. I'd have to look back and see if I've ever run just methanol injection. I don't think I have, because I don't remember buying just methanol fuel. That's because I didn't get the factory rings. That makes sense, though. We just ran nozzles before the throttle body. Yeah, it does spray a lot of stuff in there, and you can get that to work. But you can. Aaron's right in his comments about overspraying it. You can get too much in there. You can see water meth systems, like when we were doing the testing with distribution. You could see we really had to tune it down to not get puddling in the factory manifold. So you can get too much in there and hurt things. Obviously, you don't want to hydrolock it, but you could also hurt power from doing that. Jim's Machine Shop on YouTube has a video on head bolt repair. How fast do you think 85 will rot out the fuel lines? Are you talking about like older rubber lines? I don't know what the degradation time period is. I'm not sure you can buy methanol. Well, what is it you're buying when you buy M1? M5 is a mixture, but I mean, isn't that just methanol? I'm watching from Rod Run and Pigeon Forge tonight. Nice. I'm sure I'd take a permit. But can't you buy five? You can buy 5-gallon drums of that, right? You can buy 5-gallon drums of nitromethane too, right? It dropped air temps from high 100s to 128. So like from 190, is that what you're saying, to 128 while moving? I don't doubt what you're saying, but we saw an odd drop in power when I tried intercooling. Did you put a restrictive intercooler on there or something? Yeah, your shadow's right. You don't want fuel leaks. Definitely. No, methanol, the fuel, is not definitely not drinkable. Wasn't the old tester's fuel for model airplanes methanol? It probably was, right? I don't think there was nitromethane in that. Close to 200. And as somebody pointed out on a lot of my tests when we were running water methanol, we're trying to measure the temperature change. You know, how much moisture are we getting on the type K thermocouple, and so how accurate is that? Is it measuring just the temperature of that water, or the methanol, or the liquid? And is it not measuring the temperature of the air? Do we need to shield it? Do we, all of that? I think maybe went too big for the pressure you're running. Where's the best place to put the nozzle on the turbo engine? Well, if you listen to the turbo guys that do water meth injection, that it's before the turbo. I don't have experience with that, but it should help with droplet size, right? Smell it, it's nitromethane. It does smell like that. I remember those the what were they? Cox was the name of the company, right? So it was COX, and they had the planes that you could fly, and you had to start them up and chop your finger and stuff. How can you harness that cooling effect to cool the cabin of the vehicle? You can do a swamp cooler. I know it's today or the last couple of days, I think, were the first days that I've used my AC in the truck. Just a 5-gallon pail of VP M1. A lot of guys think windshield wiper fluid works as well. It doesn't. No water, 100% methanol. Yeah, 100% methanol probably would be better. And I want to get some just so that I can run methanol on like a turbo application, just by itself as the fuel, as the main fuel. I don't really know if my guess for power loss is right, but with my dyno tuner, we changed setups and put a snow meth system on it. Okay. If you got something that works, you got something that works. I just have never seen water methanol do what an intercooler does. All right, Shadow, we'll see you, man. Also, I have a 347 stroker I'm building. I saw your videos. I have an XFI 236 cam, 185s, port matched AFR. AFR did a forward intake manifold. What's the best springs? The valve springs? I don't know. I don't know off the top of my head. You're just gonna have to get springs that work for whatever installed height you have, and then for the lift of that cam, which I think was in the, what is that? That's high fives, right? 585 or 590 or something. 351 extreme energy XFI 236 579. So you need something that would allow you to run 600 lift. Comp saying 621-16 in their book. I would check, and I don't know if that spring and its attending retainer and keeper setup will work with Airflow Research heads. You can talk to the guys at Airflow Research. They probably have a 600 lift hydraulic roller spring package for that. What carburetor should I use? And should I use a high volume pump or a standard oil pump? What kind of oiling system do you have? And what That thing's going to need a 750 or an 850. It's going to need at least a 750, but an 850 would be good. Here in Florida, you remove the humidity. I've been to Florida. It didn't seem like it was removed at all. But they do have good snakes and gators and stuff, though. Cod liver oil? I don't think I've ever tried that. Very interesting education chatting tonight. Dan, you regard liver as a crime against onions? I'm a fan of onions, but probably not liver. Type K thermocouples are not fast enough to act. Watch your comparison videos several times. Chicken liver, no. Just hard pass on the liver part of it. Saw a mammoth gator near Cape Canaveral. I think the biggest one we saw was probably 8 or 9 feet, or when I was out there. We were pretty close to it though. It was cool. I'm going to go back. I'm going to go back again, and I want to and again and again and again until I just want to find one big python. Water depth injection should add power through charge cooling the same as a carburetor. 65% are saying yes. You got a 12-footer? That's big. Yeah, the cod liver oil stuff that's kind of old school. 1 more minute. So mammoth gator. This one looked 15 feet and 3.5 feet wide. It's big. They really are. When you see them up close, you're like, oh yeah, that's definitely a dinosaur. Those are definitely prehistoric. Yeah, Florida is great for that. And I got to see lots and lots of different snakes. And that's the cool thing about going to different places, that you get to meet different people too, which is awesome. But for me, the going out and trying to find the snakes, I find completely different ones than we find here in California or anywhere else. I mean, it's cool to see we did find one Burmese python, but it was small. But I got to see a lot of other things. I got to see a baby Eastern diamondback, which I really wanted to see because I want to see a big one, but got to see the water moccasins and stuff, which were cool. Racer snakes, a bunch of those. What else? We saw a few of them. R6 PSI should hold on a dead stock 4.3 Vortex. Yeah. Stock tune, I don't know about that. They move faster than they look. Don't walk up on one. I know we did that, and I reminded my buddy Jimmy. I'm like, they're fast. They can catch you. I said, so you want to this one, left and went away, went into the water. But I said, look, it could also decide not to do that. And I said, we don't want to have to, take care of that situation or take you to the hospital or whatever. The rattlesnakes are fat but not long. The Eastern diamondbacks are. They're smaller out here. The Western diamondbacks are not as big. They're pretty beefy, but they're not very long. But the Eastern diamondbacks get big. What's the best EFI system I can replace my 750 Holly with that won't break the bank? I wouldn't do that. I would stay with a carburetor. We got a place up here with the huge tortoises. Those are cool. We did see a couple of softies, a couple of soft shell turtles, which was awesome. Find a bunch of snakes in eastern Tennessee. I know every time I go back and see Brian in Kentucky, I'm like, where are all the snakes? There's got to be lots of snakes here. They can climb a chain link fence. A gator can climb a chain link fence. Rattlers can balance your engine. Yeah, points for that. I've run a few of those. I like hearing your experience of the Florida wildlife. The thing that got the most, that worried us the most, were the mosquitoes. They were pretty ravenous. Today I took it easy and sat around, watched my neighbor's cat get some baby lizards. I like when we go out, take the dogs for walks, and when I go out and run and stuff. There's lots of the blue bellies, the western fence lizards, that sit in various spots when we're running, and I like watching them when they're doing push-ups. You found a 6-foot rattlesnake in California? That would be really, really big. Seen some big copperheads don't normally get very big. Corn snakes can get bigger. Hognose snakes are usually small. The racers are pretty big. If it's an indigo snake, they can get really big. If you put 4 rods on a crank, is the only reliable way to balance it is to take it to a shop. Yeah, you're definitely going to change the weight of both ends and the whole thing. Iguana hunting, yes, I've watched a lot of that. I've never done that, but yeah, it's an invasive species. I had iguanas when I was a kid growing up, and I really like them, but they're just overrun stuff. Indigo snakes eat other snakes. Yeah, they're like king snakes and a lot of other snakes too. Racer snakes do. And really any snake will eat another snake if it can overpower. If it's bigger than the other snake, it will eat that. That's not uncommon at all. But yeah, the king snakes and rattlesnakes and corn snakes and milk snakes, all of those are venomous snake eaters. Dressed at dusk with long pants and sleeves. I did. I had long sleeves on. I had pants on and stuff. So garter snakes in the front yard. Yeah, there's garter snakes are out right now. I saw one ringneck snake already too. Yeah, we went out spotlighting. There was 4 of us, and we went, brought all of our lights and everything. So we cruised the freeways and the back roads and the billabongs. I would have to keep 1 or 2 iguanas to go with my beardies. Yeah, those are cool. And some of the iguanas that you see on the YouTube with the who is it, the cowboy guy? He's pretty cool. I've seen him on some of the swamp people shows. But it's pretty cool. The things that they use are pretty sophisticated. It's pretty cool. So a couple of vultures out here today. Yeah, those are not my favorite. I do like hawks and eagles and stuff, but the vultures are. I'm not a big fan of crows either. Beardies are pretty fun as pets. They got personalities. That's cool. I like the horny toads too. That squirt. They squirt blood out of the corner of their eye at you. I got to handle a monitor, and now I want one of them. Oh yeah, those are big. I got to hold one of those when I was little. We went to I think that it was Golden Gate Park, and they let me hold a big iguana and then one of the monitors. It was cool. Call them buzzards. Yeah, that's what they are. Vultures keep everything clean. Yeah, they do their job. You got a ball python? Yep, those are cool. The turkeys are super aggressive around here too. I keep a 6-foot monitor in my bathtub. That is big. Aren't they all bold? And on that note, it is time to go, but I will be back as always tomorrow.